Even though I am the host, I'm probably the least familiar face on stage. Let me say I'm Harold Varmus, the director of NIH, and I'm pleased to thank you. And I'm pleased to welcome you to the dedication ceremony for the cornerstone of our new Vaccine Research Center. This is indeed a great day for the NIH. It's wonderful to have you back on our campus, Mr. President. It's a great day for the nation. It's a great day for the world. You've all been enjoying the music of the Howard University Jazz Ensemble and the World Children's Choir. Now, to begin our formal ceremony, the choir will perform its signature song, "Together We Can Change the World." Thank you very much. It's now my pleasure to introduce my boss, a woman who is setting a record every day for both length and, more important, quality of service to the Department of Health and Human Services and indeed the entire nation, a stalwart supporter of the National Institutes of Health, and an informed enthusiast for vaccine development and distribution, the Secretary of HHS, Donna E. Shalala.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, Dr. Varmus, Senator and Mrs. Bumpers, Senator Harkin, Dr. Nabel, the new director of the Vaccine Research Center, Dr. Jennifer House, the president of the March of Dimes, Sandy Thurman, my wonderful White House colleague, Dr. Baltimore, Dr. Fauci. First, let me say thank you to Dr. Varmus for his brilliant leadership of the National Institutes of Health. Mr. President, I believe that your appointment of Dr. Varmus and the reinvestment in the National Institutes of Health may be the legacy that has the longest and most sustained impact on this country and on the world. Mr. President, the day that you nominated me for HHS Secretary, I made a courtesy call from Little Rock, a telephone call to Senator Dale Bumpers. I had never met him, but I did tell him something that I had never had an opportunity to tell him, and that is that in 1988, he was my candidate for President of the United States. I am a huge fan of both Senator and Mrs. Bumpers. They are smart and savvy and saviors too. There are adults all over our country that never would have made it past early childhood without the compassion and the foresight and the determination of Senator and Mrs. Bumpers. From Arkansas to Washington to the far corners of the globe, they have been the guardians for our nations and the world's children, protecting them from polio, from measles, rubella, and other invisible enemies. I like to tell people that when the President and the Vice President first came into office, some people in Washington told us that improving childhood immunization rates in this country was a lost cause. Fortunately, we knew better, and we had the experience of the Bumpers to inspire us. They have been leaders on childhood immunization for more than 25 years and pioneered immunization programs in Arkansas that became models for the states and for the country. In the late 1980s, the Senator and Mrs. Bumpers realized that the devastation of the measles epidemic was not just tragic, it was preventable. They used that knowledge to push all of us to strengthen our childhood immunization programs. And that's why when the President took office, we created our Childhood Immunization Initiative and enlisted an army of partners and volunteers to help us. This hard work has paid big dividends. In 1997, with the Bumpers in attendance in the East Room, the President was able to announce that immunization rates had reached an all-time high, with 90% or more of America's toddlers receiving the most critical doses by age 2. We achieved this success by more than doubling the funding for childhood immunization activities and by supporting crucial scientific research necessary to develop vaccines, and by lining up everyone from Dr. Seuss to the singer John Cicada to help us get the message to parents in English and Spanish and many other languages. The message was clear: vaccinate your children on time, every time, and by mobilizing the states and the cities and communities across this country. Today, by dedicating the cornerstone for the Dale and Betty Bumpers Vaccine Research Center, we are taking the next step. When this center is completed, it will be the Cape Canaveral of vaccine research, finding cures for childhood diseases still on the loose, and bringing us closer to President Clinton's goal of finding an AIDS vaccine by 2007. It is fitting that we're dedicating the foundation of this building because the AIDS vaccine research that will begin here next year builds on the President and the Vice President's long record of accomplishment in fighting AIDS and the long-standing commitment to vaccines for prevention championed by Senator Bumpers and Mrs. Bumpers. The money this administration spends to help people living with HIV/AIDS purchase drugs and has increased the purchase of drugs by almost 900%. We've held the first ever White House conference on AIDS. New drugs to help fight HIV/AIDS are being approved in record time by the FDA. And the President and the Vice President have made AIDS one of the 6 areas in which we're working to eliminate racial and ethnic disparities by 2010. All of this has saved many lives. The death rate from AIDS fell almost 50% from 1996 to 97. And AIDS is no longer one of the top 10 leading causes of death in our country. But we are a long, and let me repeat, long way from winning this battle. While we must do all that we can to care for people with HIV/AIDS, it is vital that we also focus on prevention and an effective vaccine for our nation and for the world. So while we promote prevention, we must also unlock the secrets of AIDS and find a vaccine that will stop this disease once and for all. I compared the Dale and Betty Bumpers Vaccine Research Center to Cape Canaveral. Many of us are old enough to remember that when President John F. Kennedy challenged us to reach the moon and return safely to Earth. Someday, I believe that President Clinton's 1997 speech at Morgan State University, calling for an AIDS vaccine within 10 years, will be as famous as the grainy black and white film of President Kennedy issuing his famous challenge. It is no overstatement to say that this president has lifted our nation out of the dark ages of AIDS policy. He has brought a new level of compassion and generosity to people living with AIDS, and a new level of commitment and leadership to ending this terrible disease. Mr. President, we thank you for your extraordinary leadership on HIV/AIDS. It's also no overstatement to say that this country loves Razorbacks and scored a big victory when Arkansas had the foresight to elect not 1 but 2 governors blessed with wives who are leaders in their own right on children's health issues. The President and Mrs. Clinton, the Senator and Mrs. Bumpers are fighting every day to help all of us live a healthier tomorrow. And that's why we're here today. The depth of these leaders' commitment to a healthier America could not go unnoticed in the halls of Congress, where one senator, perhaps taken by Hollywood's renewed interest in Shakespeare, asked the question, "What's in a name?" Senator Harkin answered that question with a resounding plenty. He knew that a center destined to do great things must be named after 2 people who had accomplished great things. Those 2 people, of course, are Senator Dale Bumpers and Mrs. Bumpers. So Senator Harkin introduced the amendment that will forever enshrine their names and their life-saving work on the front of the building that will stand here starting next year. So it's a pleasure for me to introduce not only the man who did the naming, but more importantly, an extraordinary senator from Iowa who has been this institute's strongest supporter, a strong advocate for health, a strong and ferocious fighter for research, and a great namer of buildings, Senator Tom Harkin.
Very much. Thank you. Madam Secretary, thank you very much for that very kind and generous introduction. But more importantly, thank you for so many good years of strong leadership for the health and well-being of the citizens of this country. It's been a real privilege and a pleasure for me to work with you over all these years. President Clinton, Dr. Varmus, our Deputy Director, Ruth Kirstein, our Surgeon General, Dr. Satcher, or I should say Admiral Satcher, and all of our guests who are here today. And I'd also like to recognize all of the Institute directors who have gathered with us here today. We are all friends who are united in the noblest struggle of all, fighting and conquering mankind's most common and oldest enemies, diseases and illnesses, whether acquired or inherited. In fact, all who are involved in biomedical research are pioneers in this effort, and that description certainly fits everyone in this room today. With the final chapters being written on the mapping and sequencing of the human gene, Francis, and breakthrough discoveries on stem cell therapy, we're truly on the threshold of an exciting time in biomedical research. Someone once said at one of my hearings, back when I was chairman, "It will come again." Someone once said that the goal of biomedical research is to enable us to die young, as late in life as possible. Well, perhaps the first and foremost in realizing that goal is furthering research and application of vaccinations that enable children to live to adulthood. And that's why we're all here today, to dedicate this facility to two people who have been generals in the battle to make vaccines more available around the globe. Betty and Dale, as Secretary Shalala said, have worked for immunization programs since the early 1970s. When Dale was governor of Arkansas, he and Betty instituted a program that required the state's school-age children to provide proof of immunization before they could enter first grade. And then in 1977, Betty teamed up with First Lady Rosalynn Carter to sponsor a nationwide immunization program, Every Child by Two. And thanks to you, Betty, every state in the nation now requires that all children be immunized before they enter kindergarten and first grade. That's because of Betty Bumpers. And early in Dale's Senate career, he established himself as the resident expert on immunization. Betty taught him. He fought for funding to purchase vaccines so America's most needy children could be vaccinated. And Dale was the Senate's earliest and strongest advocate for global eradication of polio. And Dale, thanks in great part to your efforts and your leadership, it is predicted that polio, think about this, all of us who are at least my age or older, think about when we were young and the ravages of polio in our country. Because of the great work of people like Dale Bumpers, and especially because of his great leadership, it is predicted that polio will be eradicated from the planet by the end of the year 2000. What an achievement. So Dale and Betty, I was honored to offer the amendment to last year's omnibus appropriations bill, which authorized the naming of this facility after both of you. I might just say we lured Betty up to the Appropriations Committee room on the pretext that this was Dale's last full Appropriations Committee hearing. And we were going to say goodbye to him and have some flowery language and all that kind of stuff. So Betty came up, and we're sitting there, and right on cue, the Chairman Stevens, recognized me, and I began to talk about the vaccine center and about Betty Bumpers and Dale Bumpers, and I could see Dale, all of a sudden, he realized what was happening. Well, I've been around Bumpers long enough to recognize when he gets real worried. And all of a sudden, this real worried look came across his face. And I thought about it later, and I finally realized what it was. You see, we've been on the Appropriations Committee together for so long, and we always offer these amendments that never win. You know, we're always trying to cut military spending and put it into health care or something like that. So here I am waxing eloquent, and Dale probably thought, oh my gosh, here we are. Harkin's going to do this thing, and everyone's sitting around there and no one's paying attention. As you said earlier, Mr. President, no one was paying attention. And when they finally call the vote, they're just going to knee-jerk think it's some Harkin or Bumpers amendment to cut military spending further, and they're going to vote against it, and that's going to be the end of it. Well, they were paying attention, and it passed unanimously in both the committee and in the Senate. Well, I think you can tell from this that I am a great fan of Dale and Betty Bumpers. I was privileged to serve with Dale for many years in the Senate. We worked together on many issues. And as I just said, we teamed up on just about every fight to cut wasteful Pentagon spending and moving it into health care funding. In fact, I can only remember one time when Dale Bumpers and I really disagreed on anything. And sort of apropos of what Secretary Shalala said in 1988, actually it was 1987, I and a couple of my colleagues went to see Dale Bumpers to ask him to run for President of the United States in 1988. Well, he thought about it a while, and we came back a couple of weeks later, and he said he wouldn't do it. And he said, I don't know what he said, but it was something like this. He said, do you really think the people of this country have the common sense to elect someone from Arkansas President of the United States? And 4 years later, the answer was a resounding yes. They did have the common sense, I'll tell you. And I also have to say one other thing. There isn't a week or two goes by that I'm somewhere in the country and someone comes up to me and says to me, one of the greatest speeches they ever heard on the Senate floor was the speech that Dale Bumpers gave back in January during that assault on our Constitution of the United States. One of the great speeches of all time on the Senate floor. So I've been an FOB for a long time. That stands for Friend of Bumpers, right? I am a dedicated FOB, and I'm also a friend of Bill, President Bill Clinton. And where health care is concerned, President Clinton is a friend to all Americans. The Clinton administration has fought long and hard to increase preventative and remedial health care coverage for the uninsured and underinsured, expanded rural health care coverage, something very near and dear to both Dale and to me, and expanded the badly needed community health centers. In 1992, when President Clinton was elected, our community health centers served 7 million Americans. Today, over 11 million Americans receive health care from our community health centers, and it's expanding every day. A 50% increase in the number of people served by our community health centers. And many of these are the places where the kids get the vaccines through the kids' vaccine program that they initiated in the Senate. That's where they get the vaccinations, through the community health centers. And so we thank you, Mr. President, for looking out for our unserved and our underserved citizens, and especially our children. Yes, there's more to be done. Some 44 million Americans are still uninsured. And I know that President Clinton is committed to turning that around. And I'll say something else. If President Clinton's health care bill had passed in 1994, there wouldn't be one person uncovered in America today, I'll tell you that. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to present my fellow FOB, my fellow friend of Bumpers, the President of the United States.
Great job. Thank you. That was really good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you very much, Senator Harkin, for your friendship, your leadership, and for your successful efforts to get this facility named for Dale and Betty Bumpers. You know, ever since the Republicans won a majority in the House and the Senate in 1994, it's been impossible to get anything named for a Democrat. Hey, we've named more buildings than ever before in the history of the country at a breathtaking rate, and I just wanted to come here to make sure this was actually going to happen today. And I really thank you, Tom Harkin, for your persistence. Thank you, Dr. Varmus, Dr. Satcher, Secretary Shalala, thank you for your remarks and what you said. I want to thank all the leaders of the NIH who are here, and others involved in all the various endeavors, especially Sandy Thurman, who leads our effort on AIDS. I want to say a special word of appreciation to the families of Dale and Betty Bumpers who are here, including 2 of their 3 children. I want to express the regrets of the First Lady and the Vice President for not being able to be here today, and in particular, because of our long friendship and common interests, I know that Hillary wanted to come.
44 years ago, Edward R. Murrow described the day Dr. Salk announced his discovery of a polio vaccine with these words: "The sun was warm, the earth coming alive. There was hope and promise in the air. The occasion called for banners in the breeze and trumpets in the distance." Indeed, that discovery did herald the dawn of a golden age of development of vaccines and prevention of disease. In the 50 years since, we have benefited from the discovery of vaccines against some 20 infectious diseases. Tens of millions of lives have been saved. Tens of millions of children have been spared the agony and crippling pain of polio, mumps, rubella, measles, most recently meningitis. 20 years ago, we eradicated smallpox, the disease that for thousands of years struck down men, women, and children all around the world and destroyed entire civilizations. We have eliminated polio from our own hemisphere, and as you have already heard, will eliminate it from the earth early in the new millennium. The triumph of vaccines over infectious disease is one of the great achievements of a remarkable 20th century. And at century's end, the men and women who labor in labs to unlock the mysteries of human biology and disease, especially those here at the National Institute of Health, have made this one of America's great citadels of hope, not only for our people, but for people throughout the world. I think it is important to note, though, that we are here today because the triumph of immunization over disease is also the triumph not just of scientists, but of countless citizens across America, public health specialists, advocates, volunteers, leaders in government, who work together to support new research and to bring life-saving vaccines to all people. It is the triumph of the couple we honor today, my friends of many, many years, Dale and Betty Bumpers. More than 25 years ago, Betty Bumpers was the first person to open my eyes to the fact that though many vaccines have been discovered, approved, and marketed, too few children in our state then and across America were being immunized. As the First Lady of our state, she visited every community and every school, talking to parents and teachers about the necessity of immunizing their children. In fact, Betty became so identified with the immunization cause that people used to joke that every time she walked into a school, the kids would start to cry. They knew that when she came in, somebody was going to have to get a shot. Her work inspired President Carter to launch a nationwide campaign to immunize all children by the time they entered school. Today, I am still amazed by her tirelessness in traveling across the country with Rosalind Carter to ensure that every child is immunized by the age of 2. I'd also like to say something that many of you know. She is here today just 2 days after back surgery, which is an ultimate testament to her grit and determination. You know, especially her husband's and mine. And I told her today, she just hit me one more time. I got a huge applause in the State of the Union address a couple of years ago, railing against these HMOs and hospitals that kick people out after drive-by surgery. And she's Exhibit A for drive-by surgery. I mean, here she is. She looks great. I'm going to have to at least modify my position on that issue, I guess. When Betty was working at the grassroots, Dale was working in government. Over 4 terms and 24 years representing our home state in the United States Senate, he became the resident expert and the greatest champion for immunization in that body. Through dark times when it looked as if Congress and the White House might fail to do their part to make vaccines more widely available, his passionate and persuasive arguments would stir consciences and, on occasion, change votes. After the measles epidemic of the late 80s and early 90s, Dale Bumpers rallied his colleagues. He took to the Senate floor to lament 27,000 cases of measles, cases he called, and I quote, totally shameful and avoidable. He challenged his colleagues to rise to their responsibility to protect our children. Our children have been lucky to have his heart and his voice at their service. For a long, long time, Hillary and I have been inspired by Dale and Betty's personal crusade. In 1993, I took office committed to renewing America and preparing our country for a new century. A key to the strategy we embraced was investing in our people, investing in technology, and dramatically increasing our efforts in research and development in areas that were pivotal opportunities for the future of Americans' quality of life. We made funding basic science research that could lead to new vaccines one of our top priorities. We launched a new initiative to improve immunization services, to make existing vaccines safer and more affordable, and to boost immunization rates across America. And I was profoundly proud when 2 summers ago, Hillary and I were able to invite Dale and Betty to the White House, where we announced that finally America had reached its highest immunization rate ever, and more than 90% of all 2-year-olds in our country have received their most critical doses of recommended vaccines, thanks in no small measure to the years and years and years of effort that they have spearheaded. Therefore, it is entirely fitting that today we dedicate this state-of-the-art facility to them, 2 great Americans, 2 wonderful human beings. Today, we also lay a new cornerstone in our ongoing efforts against HIV and AIDS. With biotechnology accelerating the development of new vaccines and making existing ones even safer, it is a hopeful moment for vaccine research in America, including the challenge of finding a vaccine against AIDS. Today, 1 out of every 100 people in the world is living with HIV and AIDS. With the recent news that AIDS has surpassed tuberculosis and malaria to become the leading infectious killer in the world, claiming 2.5 million lives in 1998 alone, and growing, I might add, at truly breathtaking rates in Africa and India, we cannot afford to waste a second in our fight against it. Over the past 6 years, we have worked hard to conquer this disease. We have established the Office of National AIDS Policy to lead an effort full-time, expanded our investment in AIDS research to a record $1.8 billion, accelerated the approval of new drugs. 2 years ago, as Secretary Shalala said, I challenged America to come together to develop a vaccine for AIDS within 10 years. Our balanced budget will target $200 million toward this goal. And until an AIDS vaccine is tested and approved, it will remain the primary mission of the Dale and Betty Bumpers Vaccine Research Center. I am confident that this is a place where miracles will happen. Miracles born of hard work, ceaseless effort, visionary dreams. I look forward to the day when I can come back here to a grand facility with, in Murrow's words, banners blowing in the breeze and trumpets in the distance, heralding another great vaccine achievement for mankind, the end of AIDS. When that day comes, it will be due in large part to the work of the people who will be here at the Bumpers Center and to the 2 truly wonderful people for whom the center is named. Thank you for your work and for letting me be a part of today's ceremony. And God bless you, Dale and Betty. Thank you very much.
running for the bumpers.
They're going up.
They're going to speak. I'm going to introduce them.
I think we were one of my supposed to make remarks. We have the drill, right? I see so many faces out here that I need to call their names and thank them that I have worked with over a long period of years. But first of all, I think I want to thank my husband for having the courage to let me go and be who and what I wanted to be when he was governor, to pick the projects that I wanted, and to support me in them. For one thing, with a $50,000 grant from the State Emergency Fund to kick off our immunizations in 1972, I believe it was, wasn't it, Alan Hinman? Then after President Carter was elected, I went to Mrs. Carter the first thing and asked her to help me with making our program in Arkansas a national program. And she has been my unfailing companion since then. And since 1991, when we had the measles epidemics among the birth to 2-year-olds, basically, and lost, I think, 123 of them, she was the one that called me and said, what are we going to do about all these babies dying? So that's when we started Every Child by Two. And since then, we have traveled to all, not quite all, 49 states, I believe, and helped organize through the governor's wives coalitions of volunteers in all of those states that have helped us and all of the other health providers get those levels up to the 90 percentile. So I owe a great deal of this to her visibility and her hard work with me. And then the support that I have gotten from the Centers for Disease Control, of course, who have guided me through 3 directors, I believe, and a lot of the other health providers all over the country. We all, I think, can take a deep bow. Thank lots of you that are in here today. Thank you.
Mr. President, Secretary Shalala, Senator Harkin, Dr. Varmus, and my longtime dear friend, Dr. Satcher, thank you very much for your tireless efforts in making this afternoon such a memorable occasion for both Betty and me, and I hope for you. I'm sorry Senator Specter couldn't be here, because Senator Specter he's chairman of the subcommittee that funds NIH. Before him, Senator Harkin was chairman of the committee. So I have to say, NIH has been indeed fortunate to have the chairman they've had chairing that committee. Let me also say, Dr. Varmus, that in all of my years of railing about our skewed priorities for spending in this country, NIH was always my favorite foil. I always used that figure that I heard many years ago, that NIH can only fund about 25 to 28% of the really good medical applications for medical research that they'd like to fund. And then whatever I was talking about, which maybe the space station, which I detested, or some weapon system the Pentagon didn't need. I always use the NIH to say, you think about this, show that righteous indignation. Let me also say that Mr. President, you remember Senator Eagleton out in Missouri. I was out in Missouri last Friday making a speech, and Senator Eagleton has totally lost his hearing in both ears because of a virus. And I told him, he's better off than I am. I'd rather lose my hearing than my memory. And I told him the story about these two couples that had retired in Florida. They were going out to dinner one night. They had their green blazers and pink trousers on. You know the scene. Husbands in the front seat, wives in the back. And Joe was driving, and he says, "Bob, where do you want to go for dinner?" And Bob said, "I want to go to a restaurant my wife and I have been going to. We love it. It's just great." He said, "What's the name of it?" He said, "The name of it?" He said, "Wait a minute, I'll think of it." He said, "Just drive down to the red light and turn right. When I get down there someplace, I'll either remember it or I'll know where it is." And he did, and they kept trying to remember it. After a while, he still couldn't remember it. He turned to the driver and he says, "Joe, what is a flower that has a long stem?" Joe said, "An iris?" "No, it's not an iris." He said, "Maybe a daffodil?" "No, it's not a daffodil." He said, "You know, it's got a long stem and the stem has thorns on it." Joe said, "Well, it's a rose." He said, "That's it, it's a rose." And he turned around and says, "Rose, what's the name of that restaurant we've been going?" And on a humorous note, I've said many times, and it's worth repeating today, if it weren't for Hillary Clinton and Betty Bumpers, I know a couple of politicians who would probably be working for the Little Rock Sanitation Department. Don't applaud. On a point of personal privilege, doesn't mean anything to you, but it means everything in the world to me. I want my children and grandchildren and Betty's two sisters who are here with us today to stand just so you can see how fortunate I really am and how fortunate Betty is. Stand up. On a bright fall afternoon last fall, as Senator Harkin described for you, we were having the last full meeting of the Appropriations Committee that I would ever attend. And the first order of business was for Senator Stevens, who was chairman of the Appropriations Committee, to recognize Senator Harkin. I knew there was something strange about that, and also knew there was something strange about my two grandchildren suddenly appearing. But it was a well-kept secret. And Senator Harkin began to describe the great virtues of Dale and Betty Bumpers and immunizations, and I thought maybe I was going to get yet another plaque. And I thought at best I would get a chance to make a speech to the full Appropriations Committee, and Mr. President, the committee room was full. Incidentally, when the Senate did their farewell documentary to me and they interviewed senators saying all manner of great things about what a great senator I'd been, I remember Senator Leahy said, when Senator Bumpers got up on the Senate floor to say, "I'll be brief," you knew you could go home and mow the lawn and have dinner with your family and still get back in plenty of time for the end of the speech. That would have been funnier if anybody but Senator Leahy had said it. But suddenly Senator Harkin got to the crux of what he was going to do, and that was to announce that he was offering an amendment on the Appropriations Committee at that very moment to name the new Vaccine Research Center at NIH after Dale and Betty Bumpers. There are honors and there are honors. I have to tell you, only one other honor even comes close to this. The others are all wonderful. Let me also say that I have made 5 commencement speeches this spring, Secretary Shalala, and in every speech I have told graduates that the place where they can do more for their fellow man, as my father taught me, than any other place is in the political arena. And today is, in my opinion, a graphic demonstration of precisely what I'm talking about. But following, or before that bright afternoon last fall, when Senator Harkin, one of the greatest senators ever to serve in the United States Senate, long before he made that eloquent speech before the Appropriations Committee, it was a bright, cloudless Sunday morning in 1956, when every minister of every church, all 7 of them, and mine and Betty's hometown of Charleston, Arkansas, at that time, population 1,200, every minister in town announced that everybody would go to the elementary school after church for their polio immunization. Brent, my number 1 son who can't be here, Bill, my number 2 son, was just an infant at the time, and everybody in town gathered at the elementary school and chewed up a sugar cube that Dr. Salk had provided for us. I cannot tell you what we had gone through with Brent and later Bill. We made them rest after every afternoon because we'd been told that if they got too tired, their resistance to polio would decline. And I can tell you that what Dr. Salk did for the nation that day, and especially for Dale and Betty Bumpers, was to give us something no monetary value could be put on: the tremendous parental relief we felt. One reason Betty and I grew up worshiping Franklin Roosevelt was because he believed that government had a role in health care, and the county health nurse, who was mostly paid with federal funds, came to our school. And I can remember the smallpox vaccination. It was not totally eradicated at that point. We got a tuberculin skin test, and all of us would compare arms every day to see if anybody's skin test was showing up to show that they had possibility of tuberculosis. We took tetanus shots and pertussis. That was about it. Typhoid shots were available, but they didn't pay for those. We got typhoid shots 1 week apart and had to go to bed with high fevers after the first shot. And in our hometown, occasionally somebody died of typhoid fever because the outhouse and the water well from which we drank were only a few steps apart, and we never made the connection. Betty Bumpers has introduced me to 2 things that were instrumental in my success as a politician and hopefully as a person. I bought a farm as soon as I could get the money. I thought everybody ought to be a drugstore cowboy. And this farm had 60 acres of timber on it, some of the trees over 100 years old, and so I hired a bulldozer to cut those trees down, take those trees down, so I could grow grass for my cattle, until she showed up. And she came up before the bulldozer really got going good, and she said, "Are you insane?" I said, "I'm going to cut all these trees out so I can grow grass." And she said, "Over my dead body." She ran the bulldozer operator off, and the 60 acres of timber still stands. And that's... And when I was elected governor, she's not the first lady of Arkansas that didn't want to spend all of her time pouring tea and baking cookies. And she told me, "I've got to find something that's meaningful so I can take advantage of this prestigious position in the state." And she met a woman who told her what she could do, and the 2 of them collaborated, and the rest is history. And in one Saturday, after I had given her $50,000 from my emergency fund and recruited the National Guard and the Arkansas State Health Department and everybody else that I had any control over, one Saturday we immunized 300,000 children in one day. And incidentally, since then, she just recently has been to Zimbabwe and Ivory Coast to participate in what's called a National Immunization Day. She actually gave the doses herself, polio. But anyway, I remember that night we were so gratified. And she said to me that very evening after immunizing 300,000 children, you know, this is good for your political career, but it's just a one-shot thing. This is not what we have to do. And I said, what do we have to do? She said, we have to develop a system where we monitor every child from the time they're born until they're fully immunized against every preventable childhood disease. And she started that day, Donna, and never relented from that. And she could not have been more right. I'm not going to reiterate the statistics that have already been given, but I think of the 21 vaccines we have had developed since the turn of the century, and diseases either at 99.7% eradicated to 100% eradicated because of the determined efforts of the medical professions and politicians who were willing to fund the effort. Words can never fully express mine and Betty's profound gratitude to everybody who made this day possible. But it is not the Dale and Betty Bumper's name on the facade. It is not the name on the facade or the beauty of the building that really matters. It is the indescribable relief that millions and hundreds of millions of people all over the world will get from what goes on inside that building. You can talk about cost-benefit ratios. When I first started, I did that to make sure all the budget wonks understood we were making money by immunizing our children. And the cost-benefit ratio, Secretary Shalala, was always in the 10 to 20 to 30 to 1 ratio. There was never any question about the acceptability of it from a financial standpoint or a budget standpoint. But it is that incalculable benefit which the President has so magnificently described to cure maybe even AIDS, the scourge of the world, and other dreaded diseases. It is all of those things that will be prevented by dedicated researchers inside that building. And that's what really counts. And Betty and I, wherever we are, will smile down and think we played a small role in it. Thank you very much.